Hello, comrades. Today I'm going to be doing an audiobook of Marxism-Leninism-Maoism basic course from the Communist Party of India Maoist, the CPI-M, which is a work that basically traces the development of Marxism-Leninism-Maoism, the conditions that gave rise to it and the history behind it, and basically explains the theories, I believe. So I think it'll be a pretty useful work, and it's published by Foreign Languages Press. Yeah, here's all the information. And in this first audiobook, I'm just going to be doing the first two chapters, and then I'll be working my way through it in subsequent episodes. And my source for this is Marxist Internet Archive, marxist.org, which is where I'm getting this online version. Anyway, I'm going to begin the audiobook now. Chapter 1, Introduction. Most of us revolutionary activists are practical people. We feel, why bother about ideology and theory and such other things? That is for scholars and intellectuals. The most important thing is to get on with the job. The lower-level activists and members feel that it is sufficient that the Central Committee and higher committees do study and provide guidance, and often many members in the higher committees also feel that other work is too pressing to allow much time for theory. On the other hand, there are a few people who feel it is necessary to know every work of the great teachers in order to work properly. They spend large amounts of time trying to read everything. They also have a tendency to treat everything they read as dogma. It is necessary to avoid both these attitudes in our study. All comrades should give sufficient time and attention to study in order to understand the essence of our ideology, Marxism-Leninism-Maoism, MLM. Rather than knowing by heart a large number of books, it is necessary to understand deeply the essential and basic aspects of our guiding ideology. If we do this and learn to apply it in our day-to-day work, we can greatly improve our practice, both as individual activists as well as of the party as a whole. Very often, we understand and analyze the world around us only according to our own limited experiences, and therefore arrive at wrong conclusions. A proper understanding of MLM can help us overcome such errors. At other times, a superficial understanding can lead to going by only the letter of certain party decisions and stands and not understanding their essence and spirit. Such mistakes can also be avoided by a deeper grasp of MLM. By our study of MLM, we can learn the positive and negative experiences of world revolution. We learn to absorb the good in it, and we learn to differentiate between the good and the bad in our own practice. We thus learn to recognize, criticize, and fight all types of opportunism. In short, MLM is a must in order to mold our practice in the light of theory. This basic course in MLM is intended to present to activists an understanding of the principal aspects of our ideology. Our ideology is first and foremost a practical ideology meant to be implemented and put into practice. The theory itself emerged in the course of numerous class struggles. It is therefore essential to understand the concrete material conditions and social practice through which the great teachers of the proletariat, Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, and Mao, discovered and formulated its basic principles. Thus, this book has been presented by relating the historical process of the growth and development of MLM. The basic concepts have been presented in short by, wherever possible, linking the socio-economic conditions, main political events, and class struggles that gave birth to them. In order to understand any particular aspect in detail, more particular study would be necessary. This basic course, however, is meant to provide an essential basis for understanding the dynamic process of the development of our ideology, and in what historical conditions and circumstances certain stands and theory came into being. Come, let's begin our study. Chapter 2. What is Marxism-Leninism-Maoism? The party leading the revolution is the Communist Party, and the ideology guiding the thinking and practice of the Communist Party is Marxism-Leninism-Maoism, MLM. This is known to all of us. However, many of us are not sure what exactly is meant by communist ideology, or MLM, and what are its various parts or aspects. Quite a few understand it simply as the ideas of Marx, Lenin, and Mao. Such an understanding is incomplete, insufficient, and superficial. What is needed is to go deeper into the matter and understand the internal essence. First, let us therefore try to understand this essence of MLM. At the time when Marx and Engels were first developing and propagating the theory of communism, Engels, in 1847, drafted a booklet called The Principles of Communism. In this, he defined what communism is in the following very simple manner. Communism is the doctrine of the prerequisites for the emancipation of the proletariat. Thus, Engels, in this very short definition, explains that the essence of communist ideology is to provide the theory regarding what is needed to achieve the ultimate freedom of the working class, the proletariat. This freedom would finally be achieved through the establishment of communist society. Stalin explained the same thing in the following way. Quote, Marxism is the science of laws governing the development of nature and society, the science of the revolution of the oppressed and exploited masses, the science of the victory of socialism in all countries, the science of building a communist society, end quote. Here, Stalin explains the wide scope of Marxism. Firstly, it is a science which provides the answers to questions concerning not only society but also the whole of nature. Thus, Marxism is an all-encompassing science. Secondly, it is a science regarding revolution, and this revolution is not of the rich, as in earlier bourgeois revolutions of the capitalist class, but of the poor and toiling masses. And thirdly, it is the science of building socialist and communist society. This science is today given the name of Marxism-Leninism-Maoism, after the names of the three teachers who played the greatest role in the establishing and developing it: Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, and Mao Zedong. Besides these three, we recognize two other great teachers who played a tremendous role: Friedrich Engels and Joseph Stalin. Engels was a comrade of Marx, who closely collaborated with him in laying the foundations of Marxism, as well as in advancing it after Marx's death. Stalin defended and developed Marxism-Leninism after Lenin's death. Marxism was first worked out by Marx with the help of Engels more than 150 years ago. The principal parts of Marxism are the philosophy of dialectical materialism and the discovery of the materialist conception of history, or historical materialism. Marxist political economy, which discovered the laws of motion of capitalism and its contradictions, and the doctrine of surplus value, which uncovered the source of exploitation, and the theory of scientific socialism, based on the doctrine of class struggle and the outlining of the principles governing the tactics of the class struggle of the proletariat. Leninism is Marxism in the era of imperialism and the proletarian revolution. It was first developed by Lenin around the turn of the century, during the course of the Russian Revolution, while fighting the opportunism of the Second International and while advancing the international communist movement through the Third International. Leninism, while defending and developing Marxism, made the following significant contributions: the discovery of the laws of motion of capitalism under imperialism and how they would inevitably lead the imperialist powers to war, the qualitative development of the theory and practice of proletarian revolution during the bourgeois democratic revolution, as well as the socialist revolution, a clear understanding regarding the dictatorship of the proletariat, as well as the first principles regarding socialist construction, providing the theory and direction for nationality movements and the movements in countries, and linking the national liberation movements to the world socialist revolution, the development of the organizational principles of the Leninist Party, the new type of party. Stalin, while defending and developing Leninism, particularly contributed to the principles and laws governing the period of socialist construction. Maoism is an extension and development of Marxism-Leninism, applicable to the present era. It was developed by Mao during the course of the Chinese Revolution in the process of socialist construction, in the fight against modern revisionism, and particularly during the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. Maoism's contributions include the theory of contradictions, the development of the theory of knowledge, and the formulation of the mass line, quote, from the masses to the masses, unquote, the theory of new democracy, the formulation of the path of revolution for colonies and semi-colonies, and the formulation regarding the three instruments of the revolution: the party, People's Army, and the United Front, the theory of protracted people's war, and the development of the principles of military warfare, the development of the organizational principles of the proletarian party through the understanding of two-line struggle, rectification campaigns, and criticism self-criticism, the development of the political economy of socialism on the basis of the Soviet and Chinese experience, and the dialectical understanding of the process of socialist construction as a correct handling of contradictions in the process of transition to socialism, and finally, and most importantly, the theory and practice of continuing revolution under the dictatorship of the proletariat to consolidate socialism, combat modern revisionism, and prevent the restoration of capitalism, and its concrete expression in the great proletarian cultural revolution. Marxism, Leninism, and Maoism are thus not separate ideologies, but represent the constant growth and advancement of one and the same ideology. We shall, in the following pages, try to trace the story of the process of its development. While doing this, we shall also try to understand the essence of its various parts and aspects that have been listed above. The list may appear to be long and difficult, but it needs not be so. If we concentrate and try to understand the basic essence of each aspect within its historical context, we will be able to grasp a lot. Now I'll give a little bit of my commentary on this piece. So first of all, this piece establishes the correct view that proper study of theory is necessary, but that it is better to have depth in knowledge of the key concepts than to have simply read a greater number of books. So I suppose it's better to have deep knowledge than a bunch of shallow knowledge. And it also, this work establishes that dogmatism must also be opposed, which is, of course, a very important concept. It establishes that understanding theory leads to great strides in the effectiveness of individual practice as well as the practice of the party as a whole, because obviously the party is made up of individuals, and therefore any individual's practice must be good practice in order for the party to have good practice. And also, it establishes that cadres of the party must study theory so that they can understand the party line and better support the party and serve the people. And also, it makes the point that I thought was interesting, that our tendency to understand things through our own experiences is incorrect, and it discounts the experiences of the people as a whole, as well as differences in our own experiences versus that of others, and it basically overgeneralizes things from our own experiences to that of everyone else, which is an incorrect view, obviously, because people's experiences differ, and your experiences are very different from that of the people as a whole. And so it would be an incorrect idea to equate your own experiences with that of the people. And yeah. And then it also, this work, oh yeah, of course, that is an individualist failing. Also, the work notes that if we simply take what the party does or says on its face without understanding the context, then we will have a flawed view that leads us to not understanding why that decision was taken or the theory behind it. For instance, if we look back at, I don't know, something the Bolsheviks did, for instance, and we simply looked at the specific policy they had without understanding the ideas and the context behind it, we will have a flawed understanding. For instance, they could have done something that was applicable in the in Russia back in the early 1900s, but that isn't applicable to our modern day. But why they did it, the theory behind it, could still be applicable, while the action itself might not be applicable. So, yeah, that's important to remember. And then, of course, study of MLM teaches us the truth of revolutionary struggle, both the good and bad, and this is exemplified by Maoism's anti-revisionist character and its critiques of actually existing socialism from a Marxist standpoint, not the capitalistic propagandized standpoint. For instance, Maoism critiques places like China not from the standpoint of the capitalists who lobby a bunch of false criticisms or propagandized criticisms that don't actually make much sense or flat out lies, while Maoists would make criticism of China for things from a Marxist perspective, such as ideas such as like it going too far in the way of capitalist restoration. And if I'm being honest, I haven't done the proper study to understand the question of China, but there is definitely that difference in the Maoist critiques I've heard of China versus the capitalist critiques I've heard of China. Marxism-Leninism-Maoism obviously uses the scientific method of Marxism to make proper critiques, whereas capitalists will just and capitalist critiques will just throw lies, misconstrued truths, and mostly just like false criticisms or things like this. And then yeah, we also learn the good in our practice, exemplified by our criticism of our comrades, our self-criticism, and our comrades' criticism of us. So obviously, criticism is an important part of Maoism, both criticism of socialist projects and socialist parties and socialist lines, as well as ourselves and our comrades. So yeah, it's obviously not dogmatic at all if it is applied properly. MLM is also meant to be put into practice, because without practice, what is the point of knowing theory? Which is something that I need to work towards, is moving myself towards actually going out and doing more practice. MLM, and to understand the development of theory, it is important also to understand the conditions that gave rise to its development. Obviously, using the dialectical and historical materialist viewpoint, is very important to understand the conditions that actually gave rise to Marxism and Leninism and Maoism and just MLM as a whole. So, yeah, it's important to actually understand the conditions that gave rise to it, which I think is one of the reasons this work seems like it will be a very useful piece. And the wording they use in this is also discovered and formulated its basic principles when talking about Marxism, which shows that MLM is scientific, which they go more into in Chapter 2. And this is also, obviously, this is a basic course, so it only provides a basic understanding, which means much greater study is needed to understand it in depth. And I will probably be putting up some more audiobooks of various other socialist works, works of MLM, that to help supplement this as well, because obviously that's important. The basic understanding is important, but it needs to be built upon. And then for Chapter 2, I have way less commentary, but Marxism and Marxism-Leninism-Maoism are obviously scientific, as I was pointing out in Chapter 1. They go into this a bit more in Chapter 2, and the theories cover a vast amount of ground. So, yeah, like they said, anything from society to nature, Marxism covers. And MLM is an ideology that serves the people. As we can see from this, it needs to be fundamentally put into practice, and it needs to be constantly evolving and criticizing itself to help all the correct lines so that it can better serve the people. And then I have some commentary on the actual creators of MLM. So Stalin and Engels, they synthesized and they built upon Marxism and Leninism respectively, but they did not formulate their own ideology, which is why there's no such thing as Engelsism or Stalinism. Some people use the terms Stalinism, for instance, but usually I see that coming more so when it's being lobbied as something serious, like someone seriously using the term Stalinism. It usually seems to be coming more so from the capitalist anti-communist side. But like Stalin didn't have he contributed to synthesizing Marxism-Leninism, but he did not necessarily create his own enough theoretical work of his own, as far as I understand it, for there to be such thing as a Stalinism. I think Lady Izdahar actually has a video on it's called something along the lines of why there's no such thing as Stalinism, which is a pretty good explanation of this. So yeah, I'd recommend that. And Marxism, Leninism, and Maoism made significant contributions to theory, which is why they became their own distinct, yet obviously still connected, ideologies. So yeah, they made enough unique contribution to theory to actually constitute their own ideologies. Whereas Engels and Stalin more so just synthesized and added on to Marxism and to Leninism, for instance. And yeah, that's about all the commentary I have. Thank you for listening. I will be trying to upload more chapters of this soon, and works to supplement this. For instance, one of the works I mentioned was the Principles of Communism. I might do an audiobook recording of that. But anyway, thank you for listening. Solidarity to all comrades.